And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another live Xanadu Gallery Art Business Academy online critique group session. Today is Wednesday, December 16th, 2020. It's good to be back here with you in another live session. And of course, this week's session is an Ask Me Anything session. I've received a number of great questions that I hope will open up some discussion. Just quickly, by way of announcement, we are headed into the holiday season. And because of how timing's going to work and a little bit of traveling, we're going to sneak up to the mountains next week. There will be no critique group session for the next 2 weeks. So it will be into the new year before we have our next session. So just keep an eye out for the emails announcing those sessions and you'll be in good shape, but know that you're going to have a little break over the next couple of weeks. So with that, let me jump right into your questions. And those of you who are here in the panel, if you want to jump in and ask, or even if you're not in the panel, if you're in the just in the watching group, you'll see there's a hand icon that lets me know you want to get in, and I'll be happy to have you come in. Our first question comes from Charisse Rudolph today, and it's a simple question, but there's a bit to unpack. And Charissa's question is, do you recommend I open my art business account as an LLC? And so that's a little bit specific. We could get kind of a little deeper into that question with a lot of the logistics and mechanics of establishing your business as an artist. And I have to put out a disclaimer as I start to answer this question that I am not a CPA or an attorney. And so when it comes to making kind of business structure decisions about your art business, it's always a good idea to talk to a professional. Your tax situation, your liability situation might be different. And you would need the specifics of a professional to help you with that. Having said that, though, I can tell you that over the years I've worked with many artists, and what I have observed in some of the conversations that I have had are that in most cases you can keep your business structure pretty simple. For the vast majority of artists, I would suspect that even after a conversation with an accountant, you would find that just running a simple doing business as account is going to be fine. There is no need to needlessly complicate your life with paperwork and all those kinds of things. Granted, setting up an LLC has become fairly easy, and a lot of it can be done online. But there's just not much benefit that you're going to get out of that effort. I do know that in some ways it can make you feel a little more official to be able to say, I am, Joe Smith LLC artist or whatever, and there's something there, but in most cases, it's just not worth the hassle and the additional work that you may have going with your tax filings and those kind of things. So in most cases, probably not. Now, where that starts to change, when when your sales grow to a significant amount, your accountant may have some different ideas. If you hire someone to work with you in your studio, or especially if you have multiple employees working for you, then it's another consideration. And artists that I've worked with who have larger studios. So, for example, I work with a who has his own foundry and employs, a number of employees. And so, in those instances, setting up an LLC or sometimes even incorporating are going to make sense. But again, for the vast majority of us, it's just not going to be necessary. Most of the artist checks that I'm writing are being written directly to the artist with no real complexity on top of that. So again, consult your attorney, consult your tax accountant, and see what they say. But I suspect that most of the time they're going to say keep it simple. Anyone have any comments or questions on that you want to throw my direction or additional? Okay. Okay, we'll go to the next question, which comes from Cindy. And Cindy asks, hold on, let me get Cindy up. Cindy asks, how do you know if your work is sellable? Do you always know what will sell, or do you take work that is similar to previous work that sold in the past? So again, this is a question that I suspect a lot of us grapple with during the course of our careers and artists, especially early on. Is my work good enough? Is my work interesting to buyers? Is it sellable? And my experience is that the vast majority of art that's being created is sellable if you can find the right market for it and the right potential buyers to expose it to and get enough exposure to those buyers. I've mentioned it in these sessions before. I talk about it all the time in the Art Business Academy, but uh, the art business is very much about the numbers, getting your work out in front of a wide range of potential buyers in a variety of venues. You've just got to have that exposure, and as you get more and more exposure, you'll get more and more of a sense of what works and what doesn't work, both in terms of what's working within your work, what areas should you focus on, what subject matter is most successful for you, what colors, what stylistic elements are most successful for you. You'll start to get more and more experience that way. But it all comes down to that exposure. So in a lot of ways, that same principle applies to me as a gallery owner. Kind of taking the second part of that question, I have to also have a lot of exposure getting people coming in, and so that's where my locations are so important and my marketing and advertising efforts to get people in the door. But then when I get buyers into the gallery, I then have an opportunity to expose them to a variety of artists, and I likewise am seeing how they respond and what's most interesting to them. And it's a good question, Cindy. Um, are you experimenting with new things? Do you have a good sense of what's going to sell? Or are you just trying to kind of get similar things to what has sold in the past? And the answer is a combination of a little bit of all of those things. Certainly, I try to anticipate what my collectors are going to be interested in. Um, uh, but at the same time, I personally enjoy experimenting with work that is unusual, that may be a little bit outside of what we've shown, so that we can keep it fresh and interesting. It's a delicate balance between showing collectors work that has been successful selling. But if I were to only continually show that work, eventually collectors are going to get bored of it. And so, it's certainly a dynamic process in the gallery. And I will also tell you that there have been many instances where I have brought in artists into the gallery, excited personally about the work, confident that my collectors are going to be interested in the work and willing to buy it. And almost always when I bring a new artist in, I have these visions of the artwork flying out of the gallery and millions of dollars worth of sales over the next few years of that artist's work. And sometimes we're successful, and it does work out that way, that we generate a bunch of sales, and sometimes fairly quickly. And other times, it takes time to familiarize our collectors with the work, and it takes some time to get the sales going. And then sometimes the sales never come, and I'm just left baffled as to why something that I really like, and thought would be so successful doesn't end up being that way. It doesn't say anything about the quality of the work, or even the marketability of the work. Sometimes it is just the way the stars align in terms of, okay, what other work is in the gallery? How is that work drawing people in? How are they going to respond then to this new artist? And there are just these many, many variables involved that are going to determine how successfully a particular artist sells in the gallery. I don't spend too much time beating myself up over decisions that don't work out. And I definitely, as I'm talking to the artists that I'm working with, I encourage them not to spend too much time thinking about it. I encourage them, hey, it didn't work out in our venue, but that does not mean that it's not going to sell in another venue. Now, let me go back to that the first part of Cindy's question. That was, how do I know if my work is sellable? And ultimately, I would say this, that that really should only be a question until you have sold the very first piece of artwork that you've sold. Once you've made one sale, you've answered that question. It is sellable. And it's just a matter of getting it out there in front of a wide enough audience that you can reach that same kind of buyer who's going to be interested in your work. So, that first sale can be a little bit challenging to get. As you're creating more and more work, your work is evolving and becoming better. And so even if it's harder to sell some of the first pieces you're putting out in the market, or even some of the later pieces that you're putting out in the market, just I found that artists who are determined and persistent are eventually going to find a sale. And once they get that sale and continue to be persistent, they will certainly have opportunities and can find markets for their work and generate additional sales. Anyone want to jump in on that conversation about the marketability of your artwork, or concerns that you have about how people might respond to your work and whether it is sellable or specifics? Melanie, I can see you've got a question if you want to hop in. I've got you. Good morning.
Good morning. I put in the chat. I think sometimes we're lucky enough to have an art center where I live. And that, I think, is a great place to start, because a lot of people are taking painting classes. And so I think that's a easy start.
And for an artist early in her or his career, you want to take every opportunity that you can to associate with other artists, to look for organizations like that, guilds, opportunities where they can that they put together shows where you can have a pretty straightforward, easy opportunity to expose your work and just start getting your feet wet. And those can all help accelerate you towards that first sale.
Right.
And like I say, once you've got that, then kind of the next steps. There are several different ways you might approach getting on to your second and third and fifth and 10th sales. You might be choosing to go and participate in a number of art festivals and shows, which I feel there could be some real advantages in doing that and being on the front lines and interacting directly with collectors and learning what they're saying about your work, and kind of taking that and going back to the studio to incorporate what you're learning. And then obviously also, I'm a big advocate of thinking about working with galleries. And as your career develops, that can be a great opportunity to really multiply the amount of exposure that you're getting with your work. But the name of the game is just that constant pushing to get your work out there and give people the opportunity to see it, respond to it, and purchase it.
Another place that I had really good success, we're fortunate to have an open door studio where I live. And I know a lot of towns have that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
People from all over come to those. And that's really how I got my boost right there.
Yeah, great suggestions. We're fortunate to live in a time and in an art market that really is it's broad and diverse, and the entry points are multiple. An artist, almost no matter where you live, can find some way to start to break into that market, and can also aspire to and push towards the broader art market. And if you're serious about your career and you want to generate sales, there are pathways open to you and your art to be able to do that. Anyone else want to hop in on that one? And if not, I'll hop on to the next. All right, let's take the next question. This one comes from Jeff, and we actually featured Jeff's work last week or a couple weeks ago. Jeff says, as social media and online sales become a more meaningful part of an artist's revenue stream, what are your thoughts about offering promotions or discounts, things like free shipping or 20% off for the next day or week, or buy one, get a second one, certain percentage off? Do you feel the same about offering something to get website visitors to leave their email address and or contact info? Yeah, so again, a very apropos question, and a bit of a challenging question. And I will tell you that I have had some evolving philosophy and thoughts towards this question of promotions and kind of discount sales efforts and those kind of things. My tendency over the years has been to say to be very careful with those kinds of marketing efforts, and even to say I'm reluctant to participate in a lot of that kind of activity because I don't want to train my customers and would be concerned about you training your customers that they should wait for a sale. My concern being that once you kind of start to get into that cycle, are you pulling yourself then towards a perpetual 20% off sale kind of thing where you've got to be constantly pushing your sales and upping your discounts in order to get your audience to respond? Also, to a certain extent, I have found that art buyers, most of the time, it is not about the price of the artwork, how much they're paying for it, by 10 or 20% that really makes the difference. It is, I'm seeing this artwork. Do I love it? Can I afford it? And do I want to have it in my home? And if the answer is yes, whether they're paying $1,800 or $1,650 or $5,000 or $4,500, is not typically the determining factor. So again, I do want to be careful about it. I want to be very considerate about the possible implications of getting into those kind of promotional cycles. Now, having said that, over the last several years, we have done some experimentation with some simple promotions, like the idea that Jeff suggests, free shipping. There's something that if I'm doing an online promotion and a lot of my clientele is outside of the state of Arizona, in those cases where I want to kind of drive up sales a little bit and encourage something, or maybe it is around a holiday, free shipping is a pretty safe way to do that because you're not now impacting the perceived value of the artwork. You're just facilitating the sale process. So I think that can be a good promotion. We also carry some artwork that is in editions, that is at a lower price point, and that has a little bit different feel than an original painting or a limited edition bronze sculpture. It is a little bit more of a mass market kind of product where we're selling in volume on these items. Still very artistic, but not the same kind of scarcity in the work. And with those with those kinds of artworks, we have done some discount promotions, limited time discount promotions, and it has driven a significant amount of activity. And so, if you have some items, prints, cards, other things that you can sell that are maybe not your original work, that you might be able to leverage that with some promotions, and that might also be a good way to get people to sign up to your website. I guess what I'm saying is that exactly as Jeff suggests, as I wouldn't say necessarily shift more towards online and social media sales, but just as that becomes a larger potential tool for us to draw in an audience and to capture that audience, it does make sense to consider, additional promotional marketing efforts. Anyone have experience with this of doing promotional sales and what you have found, how it's impacted your sales? I think I see that Gay has her hand up, and I'm not sure, Gay, I'll bring you in. I'm not sure if you raised your hand on this or if it was already raised. Oh, hold on, Gay. I accidentally you unmuted and I muted you right back. If you can unmute again. There we go. Got you now.
Okay. I have tried the for sale approach, not on its own though, but as part of, for example, an open studio and stuff like, and I have to say this, and it's maybe just my experience, I have never sold anything that was on sale.
Yeah.
They've always, I wouldn't say that exactly, but always what I noticed is that the client will go to what they want.
Yes.
It doesn't matter, as you say, what the price is. It's really surprised me. And I have done this several times now. It could be the area I'm living in. So I always have this little array. I think, oh, now someone's on a tough timeline for their spending. They'll do this. No. And
yeah.
I found that the first time I showed stuff after graduating in 1988, everybody wanted the new work, not the sort of runs. Now I have tried with prints. My little line of one-off mono prints is different, but those are all original too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, it is interesting. There is just a little bit of a different dynamic in my experience in the art world than there is in the, fashion retail world or, anything else where you see a lot of discounts and sales and those kind of things. And you say it very well, Gay. It is what you love and what captures your attention, and you're just not going to pay a lot of attention. Now, I will say one other potential avenue that we have used several times that has resulted in some sales is that instead of doing a kind of promotional 20% off or whatever, we have issued to some good customers a kind of more of a gift certificate where we'd like to thank you for your business, and we're offering you a $400 gift certificate towards your next purchase. It's really the same thing as a sale, but it's perceived a little bit differently. Again, it's not that the work is being discounted, it's that you're receiving a credit towards your purchase. And so, you might consider something like that. And Jeff, as you were talking about, that might be a good incentive for people to sign up to your email list. Not necessarily that we can't experiment with these kind of things, but I just wouldn't pin too much hope on this being the big thing that helps you break through and start generating massive amounts of sales of your artwork. It can be a good tool, it can be a good incentive, but I will tell you that the vast majority of sales that we're making out of our gallery each year are not through these kinds of promotional efforts. It is people coming in. Now, that's not to say that once I have someone in the gallery and they're interested in a piece of artwork, that there's not going to be some negotiation that occurs on the artwork that they're interested in. Is this your best price, et cetera, et cetera? And that, there are kind of some discounting that it can occur during the process of the sale. But in fact, that does happen quite frequently. I mean, I just made a sale yesterday that was that kind of back and forth negotiation. And, that's a little bit of a different topic to unpack a bit. But just the promotional sales, I have found are not hugely helpful. I do know of some artists who have done some giveaways of small artwork on social media in order to get people to sign up to their email list. It's been very effective at getting people to sign up to the email list. I'm not sure if they're getting the right kinds of signups of people who are really interested in buying art. Sure, I'd love to have a free piece of artwork, but does that mean I'm going to buy something down the road? Not necessarily. So again, you just want to be careful because we really want the exposure, but we also want to be focused on getting the right kind of exposure. Great question, Jeff, and thanks for that and for the conversation. Tracy has a question about gallery submissions. And she says, when a gallery states, send us 5 examples of your work, do they want a series, diversity, similar but not a series? Thanks. And yeah, a good question. And again, this question could apply also when you're putting together a portfolio to send out to galleries, even when they're not being specific about what they want to see, you're just submitting to them. The question is kind of what body of work do you want to be sending to them? You hear me over and over again in these critique group sessions talking about the importance of consistency, and it's one of the big things that we're looking at. And I would suggest that you're going to find more success in presenting your work to galleries by showing a more consistent body of work. If it is like in this case, as you're mentioning, Tracy, that you can only submit 5 pieces, I would suggest you submit the 5 pieces out of your current body of work that are most consistent with one another. That's going to have more of an impact. I know there can be this perception or this thought process of, well, maybe I should take a little bit more of a shotgun approach where, well, they may not like the first one I sent. They may not like that style or subject matter. So maybe then something different in a second one or third, fourth, or fifth one, maybe that will capture their attention and encourage them to be interested in my work. I, again, just don't find that to be the case. I have found that it is better for an artist to really focus in on a consistent body of work and show that consistency, but show it to a bunch of galleries. Again, let's not put all of our eggs in one basket by just focusing our efforts on this one gallery, but let's get a consistent body of work out to a wide array of galleries. Find the ones that really respond to that work, and by showing them the consistency in the work, encourage them to be interested in representing you. So you're always going to hear me default towards consistency when there's a choice in the matter. Okay, Olaf says, he's taken the opportunity in submitting and ask me anything to say, I would really appreciate any feedback at all of my work. I'm looking for gallery representation. Well, Olaf, this is a great forum for you to do that. And we do review artwork and provide feedback. And hopefully that it helps you kind of gear up toward gallery representation. And to that end, if you have not yet submitted, and this goes for anyone who is in these sessions, if you haven't submitted your work to be reviewed in the online critique group sessions, I would encourage you to do so. And it's easy to do that. If you go to the page where you signed on for this session, or the page where you've submitted feedback before, here we are on the page. And if you just scroll down to below the time chart, there's an area that says submit your art for review in future sessions. Click on this link and you can submit your work. And we're slowly working our way through those submissions. We get a lot of them, but that's going to be a great way for us to be able to look at your work and talk about it. So I would encourage not only Olaf, but anyone who is watching the session or the recordings to go to the critique group page and submit your work for review. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking to think about being in front of all of us, but you've seen us. We're kind, we're constructive, and we would love to have your work submitted here as well. Linda, get Linda's question up here. Linda from Scottsdale, my hometown, says, this is a combination of great news and what do I do now news. 8 days ago, I sent my portfolio to the printers. The printed portfolio arrived today. It looks great. Here, the now what do I do? It's been a good week for sales. Of the 18 paintings in the portfolio, 3 have sold in the last 6 days. Yes, very good news. Can I use the now outdated portfolio to seek gallery representation? And as an aside, thanks for your art biz coaching. It was fairy dust. Always happy to help, Linda. how much would all of us love to have this problem that Linda is facing, that I've just created my portfolio and 3 of the pieces have sold? That's a great problem to have. The answer is yes, absolutely. You can use the printed portfolio that you've created. I would just buy some little red dots from your office supply store and slap them on the pages of the artwork that has sold. That's actually a great message to send to the galleries that you're showing the portfolio to, that, hey, my work is selling. Here are some sold examples of the work amongst the other pieces of my portfolio. You better speak up for the ones that are still available so we can get them in your gallery and you can be the one to sell them. But absolutely. And this is the nature of a portfolio, is that it's going to be constantly evolving. I am seeing a lot of artists who are moving away from printed hard copy portfolios to a digital portfolio on an iPad, or via email, for this very reason, that you can very quickly update it, change images in and out, and you lose a little of that flexibility if you're printing a hard copy. But it's nothing that you can't adapt to, and certainly, as those sales occur, you can be updating and reprinting that portfolio as needed, to get it ready to show to galleries. But congratulations on the sales. That's awesome. Claire from Seattle, Washington. Let's get Claire's question up here. Claire asks, how to find the best venue to not only exhibit your work, but that will sell your work. Yes, this is certainly a bit of the challenge, right? We already talked this morning. We talk very frequently about the importance of exposure, and getting your work out into a range of different venues to show that work and to get people seeing it. But that exposure in and of itself is not the end goal. And I would rather have your artwork in a venue where it's only being seen by a few hundred people, if those are, a few hundred qualified buyers who are likely to be interested and make purchases, than in a venue where hundreds of thousands of people are going to see it, but not be in a state of mind where they're thinking about buying, or amongst other art that your work might not show well with, or might not be priced favorably with. And so it is a consideration. How can I optimize the venues that are showing my work? How can I select venues that are likely to generate sales? And to a certain extent, your experience with gaining exposure and the venues where you're going to want to show your work, that's going to evolve over time, just as your artwork is evolving over time. Early in your career as an artist, you're going to be perhaps a little less picky about where you're showing your work, because you just do need to get some of that raw exposure going. And you may not have the experience or the resume to get into some of the galleries that ultimately you would like to get into. And so you kind of want to be working up towards that. Although I will tell you that you want to be careful not to shortchange yourself even early in your career. I have certainly seen artists who their very first venue for showing their work, well, shoot, I've had artists where my gallery was the very first venue where they had ever showed their work before. And certainly I know artists who have, just boldly blazed their way right into the gallery market. And sometimes some serendipity occurs, and that can happen. More often than not, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge as you're getting started and as you're trying to build momentum with your career. It's going to take more effort on your part to get into the kinds of venues that you want to get into. And so, early on, it's going to take a lot of work and a certain amount of capital to be buying supplies and materials to get the critical mass going, to then be able to leverage that and the momentum that you're getting to generate sales and get into those venues that you want to get into. So you're going to be maybe a little bit less discerning at first, and maybe not all of the venues are going to generate sales, but all of those venues are going to generate experience for you and feedback about your work and wisdom about what kinds of venues do and don't work for you. And you may find that open studio tours are terrific for you, but weekend art festivals are terrible, or vice versa. And you may find that the local co-op gallery is just not a good venue for you. You can't get the high enough prices. And, you know, all of that kind of wisdom comes through experience. And so I encourage you to just cast a pretty wide net at first and see what works and build from there. And then it will not take long as you start to get those first sales for you to be able to move into kind of the next phase of exposure and getting into better and better venues for your work. And by the way, even the artists that I'm working with who have had long, successful careers and are selling a lot of their artwork, they are still experimenting. And now instead of thinking about, okay, what kind of galleries and what should my pricing be and those kind of things, they're experimenting with, okay, which markets, which well-developed art markets in the country are best for my artwork. Does my artwork do well in a Jackson Hole, Wyoming, or a Chicago, or a Santa Fe, New Mexico? They're still learning what works and what doesn't work. This is a process that is going to be ongoing throughout your development and throughout your career as an artist. I think I have time for one more quick question, and I have one more quick question to get to here. So we are lining up pretty well with today's submissions. Juanita says, is it a good idea to have two types of work in different galleries on your website? For example, abstract and plein air work. All right, Juanita, I'm going to be delicate about this, but you gave me the specific example here. And what I'm going to say is the specific example that you gave me makes me just a little bit nervous. If you had said plein air and studio landscapes work, that would have been one thing. And I would have said, yeah, you probably can figure out good ways to categorize that artwork on your website. You might even break it down into fall scenes and summer landscapes and those kinds of things. But when you say abstracts and plein air work, that makes me a little nervous from a consistency standpoint. Certainly as you're thinking about portfolios and maybe even your website, if you're doing work that is that diverse, we may need to think about narrowing down and focusing in on one or the other of those and putting most of our effort into that, and maybe leaving the abstracts off the website or the plein air work off the website while we're focused on kind of ramping up marketing and sales. I'm assuming that that's what you're hoping to have happen on your website, is people to encounter the work and potentially buy it, or to show it to galleries. Again, I'm going to beat on that consistency drum that we just don't want to send mixed signals to potential buyers or to the galleries that might be considering showing your work. It is a little bit of a red flag for a gallery to see kind of you going along in one direction, and but then there's a whole other body of work that's significantly different from that. It's a challenge. And I mean, it's not to say that you can't have some cases where an artist is spanning two different styles of work, but boy, you're going to have to work really hard to make a connection and create a narrative that allows that to occur. You just don't want to handicap yourself with your customers or with galleries by confusing them or making them concerned that, well, boy, I sure love Juanita's landscapes. I want to buy them and have them in my collection. But what if she's really mostly interested in her abstracts, and that's what she's going to become famous for, and she's going to stop doing landscapes at the plein air work at some point in the future? That's kind of what I want to be a little bit careful about when it comes to multiple styles of work. Not to say that you can't continue doing them, and maybe you have a passion for both, but especially if you're in a phase of your career where you're really actively pushing for gallery representation, or you're getting out on the show circuit and focusing on generating a lot of sales. At that point, consistency becomes increasingly critical, and I would try to focus in on one body of work and generate success for that body of work. And all my promotional and marketing efforts would be around that one body of work. And then as time goes on and that one body of work has kind of taken off and, taken on some momentum, then I can start thinking about, well, would it be possible to introduce the other body of work and start generating some sales and, building some success around that body of work. Do I have comments or questions about multiple bodies of work? I think I might have Juanita here. If you want to hop in, Juanita, and raise your hand and get into the conversation, we can do that, or any of the rest of you. We are just about, let's see, I think I can get Juanita in. It should be asking you to unmute. Good morning.
Good morning. I have always subscribed to the feeling that my plein air work informs my abstract landscapes. And I love to be outside, love to be painting. All of that information goes into my head when I create my studio landscapes in abstract fashion.
Okay, that's good. That you just gave me a little bit of additional information there that helps. Saying abstract landscapes and plein air landscapes. Well, the landscape element there hopefully could create a tie together, and you would just want to have between those two, you'd want to have some pieces that were pretty close to one another, so that there were very natural transition from the abstract studio landscapes to the plein air landscapes. And in that case, you probably could make an argument that this is a body of work, just two different approaches. And it's going to depend on how, the varying degrees of abstraction between those two bodies of work. But if there's overlap, then you can probably make it work. And in that case, you could have two separate categories or galleries in your website to accommodate that. Or you might just find that you can create a compelling narrative by having all of the work together. And again, that could take some experimentation to figure out what best works. It's probably a little hard for us to talk about it in the in the abstract, not seeing examples of your work, Juanita. So if you'd like to submit some of that work for a consideration for a future online critique group session, we could have that conversation more concretely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've done it. We've managed to fill our time, and I appreciate the questions that you all have submitted. I love these conversations, the opportunity to hear what you're thinking about, and hopefully give you some helpful insights to push forward. Again, no broadcast for the next couple of weeks, so it's going to be 3 weeks before we're back together here. Just keep an eye out for the email. I do wish you all very happy holidays. Hope you have a great holiday season. I suspect we are all looking forward to a new year and to putting 2020 in the rearview mirror. And hopefully very good things to come in 2020 or 2021. I am very optimistic, and we're already seeing some really positive thing happen. So we'll have more to talk about when it comes to the broader art market and what's going on, and talk about your artwork. Take care, everyone. Have a great holiday season. Happy New Year, and we'll see you in a